Hello and welcome to the Justice Factor. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa yesterday confirmed that it is busy with preparations to launch a new political party. The left-wing party, to be called the United Front and Movement for Socialism, would mobilize around issues affecting workers. Will Zwelinzima VAVI, the suspended COSATU Secretary General, join it? He's my guest today to discuss his future plans as the battle within COSATU continues to rage. After that discussion, we'll give you our winner and loser of the week. But first, we look at the decision by Judge Duncan Wild last week to allow the world to watch the murder trial of the athlete Oscar Pistorius live on television. In the first ruling of its kind, Judge Wild said 3 small unmanned cameras would broadcast live part of the murder trial of the man accused of shooting his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, on Valentine's Day last year. My guest to discuss this landmark decision is the Caxton Professor of Journalism at Wits University, Professor Anton Harber, and Duncan Wild from the law firm Weber Wenzel. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Anton Harber, you're a seasoned newspaperman. Let me ask you, there's a war in the CAR, there's a war in the Ukraine almost, there are wars all over Venezuela, there's all kinds of news. Why is this dominating all the news channels that I've seen? Is this news?
Yes, it's a good week for Russia to invade the Ukraine because it probably won't make the front page in many parts of the world.
Should it be on the front page? Why is Oscar Pistorius, just at the news value level? I wanted a bit more on Venezuela and the Ukraine, I have to say. That's what I'm asking you.
Well, it is over the top, but it is also a great story that people do want to read. It's the perfect real-life soap opera story. You couldn't ask for a better formula for a story to grab the public imagination. A photogenic icon, a beautiful, much-loved victim, all on Valentine's Day. It speaks to South Africa's habit with guns. It speaks to gender violence in this country. It speaks to the fear, if you take Oscar's defense, the fear of crime and invasion. It really speaks to a lot about this country, and so people are going to be absorbed.
After one day of the wall-to-wall coverage, Twitter, my whole Twitter timeline was filled with it. All the journalists in that room were tweeting word by word, line by line, betting off an island by betting off an. Aren't you a bit tired of it already?
I certainly must say that it does get exhausting. And one did feel at times today that it got tedious as journalists tried to tweet about something at times when not much was happening.
Yes. Duncan, let me come to you. Was this a good decision? Did Judge Duncan Wild do us all a favor by allowing cameras into that courtroom?
Well, I think he did, and I think it's important to consider what the alternative would have been. As you said, courts are open. The journalists would have been there, they would have been writing about it, they would have been tweeting about it, and we would have seen the play-by-play anyway. So it adds that extra level of scrutiny. You can see exactly what's going on. You can make up your own mind. And the judgment also strikes a balance. It strikes a balance between the right to a fair trial and freedom of expression with the limitations that it imposes. So I think it is a good decision.
Well, isn't there a worry that for example, the first witness today, there she was being quite robustly interrogated by the defense? Isn't there a concern that this, knowing that she's being watched by her neighbor, her friends, and everyone, that it might put a damper on the freedom and the ability to be a witness properly?
That was one of the concerns. That's one of the reasons that Justice Mambo did impose the condition of not showing the witnesses' faces unless they consented to it. So it does protect them in that way. But it's also important to know that the court is open. She would have had to testify in any event. People could have taken her picture outside the court. They could have identified her. So it would have been there. And it's an important check that you know you're going to testify in public. You can't go there and make up a story because you know other people will be able to see you and can contradict you if it's not true.
Professor Harber, you've seen hundreds of CEOs. When the camera lights are on, a lot of us start to, it's almost like you're transported to another world. Aren't you concerned with the effect on witnesses?
I think there are concerns, but there are no lights. The camera is deliberately inobtrusive, and if it obtrudes on and makes the witness nervous, then the judge can have it turned off. But I think the positives outweigh the negatives. There are risks, but those are intangible and difficult to pin down. But the real advantages of everyone seeing the legal process, seeing every step of it, being able to follow and learn a great deal about how these things unfold, I think outweighs the risks.
What does it mean societally, and both of you can help me here, what does it mean when we have something like this happen in South Africa? This is the first time we've had it. What does it mean for freedom of speech? What does it mean for the way we view the courts? You, I'm sure, have appeared many, many times in court. And you know, for me, it's always, oh, judge so-and-so, judge magistrate so-and-so. They are the big person up there, they're the authority. Does this open that up, Duncan?
Well, I think it's important to see how it works. I mean, you see the very methodical cross-examination. It's a long process, and it'll unfold as it goes. And I think it's important to get that contrast with, you know, CSI. You can see how it actually works. You know what to expect. You can see that people aren't being treated differently or specially. And you get to make up your own mind about whether you think the lawyers are doing the correct job, or the judge is doing the correct job.
Anton Harber?
You know, this trial would always get saturation coverage. What I think is most important is that the trial's been used to set a precedent for more cameras in our courts. And I'm concerned about those trials we don't see, those trials where there isn't such clear justice, where maybe there are fewer lawyers and the defendant is unrepresented, or the prosecution misbehaves, or the judge falls asleep.
I was particularly interested, to your point, Anton. Today people were tweeting about the interpreter and saying, oh, you know, my Afrikaans is better than the interpreter's Afrikaans. Those are the things you're talking about.
So you can rest assured that they will make sure they have a damn good translator from tomorrow. And so when there is scrutiny of the courts, it does put everyone on their best behavior.
Duncan, what about Twitter? You know, everyone is tweeting it, and everyone, this trial has been it's gone wild on Twitter. Everyone's following it, everyone's tweeting, everyone's got a view. There are now Twitter handles that are started by the Oscar side and the sort of anti-Oscar side and so forth. Is that going to have an impact on this case, and on how it's viewed by society in general?
Well, it is interesting. I mean, the same rules apply to Twitter as the media, but obviously it's very hard to control. People can tweet what they like, and it's hard to track who's responsible down. And so it does lead to this. The positives are you can see exactly what everyone thinks. You can say what you think and engage with people. But the downside, obviously, is that it's very hard when someone is doing something against the rules, going too far, then it's very hard to control. So it's interesting to see how that'll play out.
I always wonder, Anton Harber, when people are tweeting so much from inside court, what are they going to report for me the next day? What's your view on Twitter?
My view is the journalist still has to pull things together at the end of the day to explain and analyze. And get a more balanced view that you can in 140 characters of Twitter. The thing about Twitter is that the witness says one thing and then it gets knocked down and it goes backwards and forwards. You still need a considered perspective and analysis at the end of the day that explains a great deal more.
We've run out of time, but one last question to each one of you. Does this set a precedent? Are we going to see more of these on television? Should we see more of these on television, Duncan?
Well, I do think we should. It definitely sets a precedent and makes it a lot easier for the next case to get the cameras in, as long as you comply with the requirements. And it sets a framework that will help that. And I think that is a good thing. As Anton said, there are lots of cases that don't get the publicity. And this will make it a bit easier. It goes one step down from Oscar to the next level of high-profile crime. But
Cross TV, Anton Harber?
I hope so. I really do hope that this now means we see a lot more televisions in court, and that the cases that would not naturally get coverage. The courts are a great arena of the South African drama, and we want to see more of it.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. After the break, Zwelenzima VAVI.
News that moves. eNCA.com.